Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cabinet. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
No apologies for members, Chair, but Penny and Kim Sorsky sent apologies to this meeting.
So we have two directors absent on leave, one on leave and one in a very important meeting in Leicester. Announcements from the chairman and or head of paid service. Well, I do have an announcement first, and that is, as you are well aware, Councillor Ellison has had an operation and is slowly returning to us. She may need to get up and walk around during the course of this meeting and is obviously free to do so to help ease her pain. Thank you.
And no announcements from me, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? One is tempted to declare an interest, or a number of us are as we're getting older, that we have issues to do with aging on the paper today, but I think technically that doesn't count. Minutes. Can we look at the minutes, please, of the meeting of the 11th of January? Are we happy that they're a correct record? All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Items raised by scrutiny. We have the chair of scrutiny here. Would you like to join us at the table, Councillor? Thank you. We have had a note of the issues, but I wonder whether Councillor Ross would like to go through them, and we will provide a response as appropriate.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first issue regarding the awareness of possible impact of unidentified and unplanned influences is more than adequately covered in the provisioning and level of reserves that are actually held by the council, and so that includes things such as inflation. Regarding SEND provision, there were concerns raised by a number of members of scrutiny about the realism of the assumed level of uptake and cost, particularly with regard to out-of-county provision. Do you want me to stop, or do you want me just to run through the list?
Sorry, if you stop after each one to give Councillor Johnson an opportunity to respond, and clearly if you're not content with the response, you can come back at him.
Thank you. So the first item then was the awareness of the possible impact of unidentified and unplanned influences on the savings proposals listed.
Johnson, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so in terms of SEND and the DSG, that's dealt with on pages 106, sorry, 105, 106, 107 of the budget pack that's in front of the Cabinet today. And a lot of information has been given there. At the moment, the assumption is, which is what we've been told to do, is that the override continues and there is no other instruction that's different to that. So we have to assume that there is a risk within this, and the size of the difference that we would have to fund in 2024-25 gets to close to 3 million. I think the latest calculation is about 2.65. So that's obviously considerable and significant in terms of the council's total budget. It's one of the reasons that the risk reserve was set up. And at the moment, we're not presuming to make any use of the risk reserve other than for that. But as this difference rises year on year, there is a risk that by 28, 29, it could rise to over 12 million, which again is significant.
I would add to that we are aware that we are not unique, that every unitary and upper tier council who have responsibility in this area are experiencing the same problems. And the government has invested resource to help us reduce the cost of SEND, but that only goes so far. And I think it's a wait and see what the next government does.
Thank you. I think the committee recognised the measures that the council has taken. I think it was simply a flagging of the likely sensitivity if the assumptions made are in any substantive way incorrect. The third issue was adult social care, and we saw in the current financial year the impact of the closure of the three facilities in Rutland. We're also aware of the inflation and increasing wage costs in the sector. And again, the issue is essentially the same as that of SEND provision. It's the robustness of the assumptions that have been made with regard to the forecast cost being made. Again, recognising the high level of reserves and provisions that do exist within the council.
Councillor Ellison, do you want to comment on adult social care?
Yeah, thank you. It's something that we are very aware of, and I suppose the unpredictability of spend. We've met with the officer for the strategic director for adult social care and had a very detailed conversation about how we can manage. We can't control the spend of the private sector. It's gone up 48% in the last year, so we know that that's a pressure. We are looking at ways to find alternatives to at least stay within budget. But I'm really impressed with how careful the spend is with what there is there. But it will go up and down. But it actually isn't as bad as first predicted. So, yes, and it's getting better. But I don't want to be any more. And I'm sure Mrs. Kim would tell me that there's probably more details to that. But I'll hand over to because Councillor Johnson was at the meeting as well. Anything else that we covered in that meeting?
No, thank you, Councillor. No, I think the key thing is that care provision in the county is actually thought to be going up, and officers have made a best guess at what they think the expenditure going forward will look like. But it is unpredictable, as Councillor Ellison said. Year on year, the increase in charges is some 48%, which is enormous, and has obviously caused us some issues in calculating budget for this year. So it is a risk, but if we were to take an overly prudent view, then what we would be doing is taking services away from some other area, which is a difficult thing to do. So although we recognise there's a risk there, we think the current outlay of the budget in adult and social care represents the best compromise between service and risk.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think scrutiny is right to raise it because any demand-led service is going to be a risk by its very nature. But I would like to reassure scrutiny that officers are continually looking at different ways of doing things to try and do them in a more cost-effective manner. And Councillor Ellison and Cabinet have been reassured that that is continuing in various ways.
Thank you. I think I accept the comments that were made by Councillor Ellison and Councillor Johnson. And I recognise that in making the assessment, it is subject to possibly significant movement. I think it was the public flagging of the ability to forecast these numbers that was part of the reason behind raising this issue with in these recommendations to Cabinet. That brings me to section 19, inspection and the initial costs involved in the Flood and Water Management Act 2010, and the provision of flooding expertise would be covered by the 46K identified in the 2025 budget. But there was no recognition in the budget at that time, and I recognise that time has moved on since these comments were made, and that in the responses to the questions, I think I'm right in saying that regarding the section 19 provision will be made against the innovation reward. However, there remains amongst all members concern about the adequacy of the budget to deal with flooding, recognising that we are at a very early stage in carrying out even the initial work under Councillor Stevenson. So it's again, it falls into a similar category to the previous points that we have made about the uncertainty about the costs that we will actually incur to properly deliver any recommendations that may arise, particularly in the forthcoming financial year 24-25.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Ross, rather, sorry. I think the point about section 19 and the costs is well made. I think we've obviously been learning about this since the incident with Storm Henk and Storm Babette back in October. We are still exploring the service requirements we have to properly exercise section 19 responsibilities. So we anticipate taking some of the money, if we can do, from the Rural Services Grant, but in terms of total funds available to us, we've allocated 200K's worth of the reserves towards this exercise, and it's important for scrutiny to realise that at the moment the council is getting some additional income from interest deposits, which is in effect a windfall, and to date we've been using to help us enact transformation initiatives early, but that would be the area that will equalise the requirements.
Councillor Wise, do you want to add anything to this?
I don't think so, other than I'd like it to stop raining.
Wouldn't we all? Thank you. I think I would like to reassure Councillor Ross and scrutiny that the director and officers have put quite a robust plan together now to deal with our shortage of a flood officer. And it does incorporate the section 19 and clearly encompasses the work scrutiny is going to do. And it's a staged plan. So things are being done in the right order in order to get an answer at the end of the day. Councillor Johnson has indicated how we're funding that work for this coming year. I take your point totally about the outcome of the section 19 and scrutiny review may indicate that we have further financial issues to address later on. It may not, of course. We don't know. I would not wish to preempt section 19 or indeed the scrutiny's review. And even where expenditure is indicated, it may not be county council expenditure. It may be Environment Agency, for example. And where it is county council, it will inevitably fall into categories of essential and desirable. And therefore choices will have to be made on the latter. And that is for next year's budget. Now, we in local government are very unhappy that we only get a settlement annually, which means we can only plan our budgets a year ahead. If we were to go back to what happened a few years ago, where we had a 2 or 3 year settlement, then we could plan ahead much more effectively, but we can't at the moment. And I think it is highly, highly unlikely that the section 19 review will be completed within the next financial year, to the degree that we can receive it, consider it, and plan from it. So in other words, early in the next financial year, because obviously it's going to take a bit of time to give it due consideration, which I'm sure all councillors will want to do. So that's my take on the section 19, Councillor Ross. Is that okay?
Thank you for that. And I'm very pleased to hear about the recognition of the phased nature of these works that we're all engaged in. I think it's important that the public recognises that is how it must logically progress, and that scrutiny and the evidence panel are very much focused on those things that can be done in the near term. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. I should have said something earlier. I could just make a comment on the SEND provision that Councillor Ross brought up. You mentioned specifically about concerns about SEND children going out of the county and the cost that involves. And that is certainly very true. I have to sign off the exemptions, and they are considerable. I would just make the point that Children's Services have been for some years involved in a SEND improvement plan and put a lot of resources into early years, primary schools and the secondary schools, that pupils with special needs are increasingly met within schools within Rutland, and so preventing those children going out of the county. So hopefully, I mean, there are obviously risks, but hopefully that will bring the costs down. Thank you.
Thank you, and we recognise that, but equally, the point was raised that there will always be children who cannot be catered for within normal schools, and I think that was the point, and that number is indeterminate.
Yes, that is very true. It can't all be accommodated within Rutland.
Thank you.
I think we also do need to recognise, though, that whilst those numbers are small in Rutland because our population is small, equally, it would not be cost effective to try and create school environments for those children because of the numbers, when specialist schools do exist outside the county, and they are not one group. We talk about SEND, but SEND covers a huge range of needs and abilities and disabilities, of course. And a given school might suit a given child, but it won't necessarily suit the next child that comes along. Am I explaining myself clearly there, Dawn? And so we we have to do the best, and we do the best for every single child. And we try and, as far as is humanly possible, match the provision to the child. And that may be outside the authority, but we only do that where it is in the very best needs of that individual child.
I think the committee fully accept the principles and the history of performance by the council in this regard, and there is no intended or implied criticism. It is simply about the basis, the assumptions that are made and the basis of the forecast, no more, no less.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the recommendation is that we note the comments from scrutiny and the views from the Strategic Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I have a proposer that we note those views? Thank you, Councillor Wise. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Brown. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Ross, for attending this morning. Right, we move on to item 6, the Home Improvement Agency procurement. The recommendations are at 1.3 in your report. There are 4 of them. I don't propose reading them out in full. Essentially, the first is that procurement is undertaken to award the Home Improvement Agency contract for the county. The second is that Cabinet approves the procurement model and overarching award criteria. The third is that we delegate approval of the final award criteria to the Director for Adult Services and Health in consultation with the portfolio holder for Adult Services and Health. And the fourth is that we recommend the approval of the award of contract is delegated, and that decisions will only be taken in line with the Cabinet approved criteria. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. Seconder, Councillor Wise, I saw first. That's been approved and seconded. Therefore, we open to debate. Councillor Ellison.
I'd just like to say a really good, clear paper. And the bit that is just hits my background, the bit I particularly liked was the evidence in 2.7 that having an HIA that's as so effective can reduce hospital admissions. You know, it's a clear no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. This is what you get for your money. So absolutely looked at all the options, as I said, and it did surprise me, and I was really quite pleased to see it wasn't just about putting stair gates and holds, or it's a bit, particularly the digital inclusion offer, which is something that we talk about and our older generation not being able to access. At least we're giving them some help and education, which I thought was wonderful. So a really good paper. And thank you very much, Jane.
Any questions or comments from members of Cabinet? No? Well, we have, Councillor Smith.
No, I was just going to thank you, Chair. I was just going to pick up on table 2.7 that Councillor Ellison has done. It's really rather impressive about the number of falls that are prevented and, you know, the saving in costs to that. Pity we can't recoup all the costs that the hospital saves, but there obviously is savings in that these people would take a long time to rehabilitate if they weren't, if they did go into hospital with breaks or whatever. So yes, I agree. It's a thoroughly good paper.
Thank you. The bit that actually struck me in that table was the improved quality of life. And always we say it is better for someone to stay in their own home than be taken into an institution, whether that's a hospital or a care home in this case. But you need help sometimes to stay in your own home, and that's what this is all about. And it does improve quality of life for those who are able to stay at home because of the help they've received. And I'm sure all of us at some point have come across someone who's benefited from this, if not this type of service. So I endorse what my colleague cabinet members have said. I did indicate the recommendations. They were proposed and seconded. If there's nothing else, all those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're moving on to item 7, the Leicestershire and Rutland Joint Living with Dementia Strategy 2024 to 28. The recommendations for this are that Cabinet approves the Leicestershire, Leicester City and Rutland Joint Dementia Strategy 2024-28, and that Cabinet approves the Rutland Council Delivery Plan. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Ellison. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Johnson, thank you. Having had it recommended, can I pass over to Councillor Ellison to talk to this paper, please?
Slightly different view on this one. This one has come to JLT and we did look at it in great detail. There are aspects that we weren't as impressed with as we were the last one. However, it is a joint strategy between Leicester City, Leicestershire and Rutland. We think it's too Leicester City focused. However, it's a working document. It's something that we can, it's not bad enough to want to change, but we need to be aware that there are some concerns that we have. But it's more about the way it was written and the lack of evidence and the lack of research and the inconsistencies were my main problem. So taking that in mind, yes, I've recommended it, but I do think it's something that we need to be mindful of in the future and perhaps make it a little bit more Rutland focused as well. So the feedback, we weren't completely satisfied, but there's a limited time frame. We will continue to amend. As for the Cabinet approval of the Rutland Council Delivery Plan, again, there were some details in that we weren't too happy with, but they can be worked on. The end of care section and the involvement of a member of Parliament, we felt was outside the remit of this this paper. So again, something it needs work, but it's not bad enough to completely throw out.
Thank you, Councillor Ellison. Does anybody else wish to make any comments? No? Well, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, albeit not enthusiastically.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we can't do that. All right, moving on then. Q3 Revenue and Capital Forecast Report. The recommendations in front of you are in paragraph 1.2. We are being asked to note the report for the revenue position, capital position and dedicated schools grant, to note the update on the achievements of the 2023-24 savings proposals and the overview of the principles followed to deliver the financial sustainability strategy, and note the performance against the Treasury Management Prudential indicators. Sorry, note that performance is against the Treasury Management prudential indicators is in line or better than the strategy set. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Johnson, seconder. I saw Councillor Smith. As it's proposed and seconded, Councillor Johnson, can I ask you to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Chair. This is the forecast for the whole year 2023-2024 as at the end of Q3, which is the end of December. And it's in line with the way the council forecasts at the end of each quarter and forecasts the full year. So this is a full year set of figures, but as forecast at the end of Q3 and is compared to budget. The council is obviously responsible for making sure that it works to fulfil its budget for the year. And this report provides Cabinet with the forecast outturn position for both the revenue budget and the capital programme for 2023-24. The key areas to note are that the outturn position shows an overall forecast underspend of 0.4 million compared to budget, which largely relates to better investment income receipts of 1.3 million against the budget. This is obviously in the national context of rising interest rates, which are combating inflationary pressures and action by the Bank of England. As agreed in the recommendations of the Q2 report, additional expenditure commitments of 0.8 million have been included within the forecast. This activity meets the criteria set out in the report and relates to activity that supports the council's financial sustainability. What this means is we decided that we would use some of the investment income early to start transformation projects earlier than we originally intended, to try and make sure that we can get the benefits earlier than we intended. When the additional expenditure is considered, an overspend of 0.4 million is forecast, which is mainly a reflection of the level of vacancies currently experienced across the council. However, the vacancy cost savings are mitigating pressures arising from contract price increases through changes in demand. So the council is expecting a churn in its staff of something between 17 and 18% this financial year, which is leading to some savings in staff costs. However, the inflation in contracts is outpacing our original anticipations as inflation comes through into the prices the council's paying. Vacancy levels present the council with risks which are outlined in the strategic risk register, and management are addressing the impact of staffing levels on the performance of services, which is shown in the additional investment in activity in 3.13. Paragraph 3 onwards gives a lot more detail. I don't intend to go through all the detail in these tables, just to pick out some of the highlights. Paragraph 3.2 indicates that the revised net cost of services budget is now 46,188 million, and the net cost of services table below in 3.3 shows a split by directorate and shows the variances applicable in Q2 and Q3. So at the moment, adults and health, places and children and families are thought to be overspending, whilst resources, law and governance are thought to be underspending. In the table at 3.3, there is a block which says financial sustainability investment, which was decided post the Q2 forecast, and that's shown at 800,000. This is the investment in the early investment in transformation that I indicated earlier. The tables shown at 3.4 show the highlights by directorate, both in terms of extra cost pressures and in savings, and indicate the relative unpredictability of forecasting costs. But overall, we are staying within our envelope. In terms of vacancies, there are a lot of references to vacancies. and savings from vacancies, one of which is in resources. I just wanted to pick up. So IT services, there's an overspend there, cost of 50,000 indicated, which talks about the provision of interim resource following the loss of the head of service. This is not just going to be spent on replacing the current provision of service, but will be used to explore better ways of providing a digital council. If we go to 3.10, that contains a phrase that may confuse some people, but I just thought I'd explain it. The overall position of the council is that the contingency budget has been released in full. What this means is that we believe that we've predicted the performance of the council adequately and feel we can release a budget that was there for contingencies, because we can manage fluctuations in the budget within the overall forecast position, partly due to things like investment income, which is a windfall, but also due to the relatively restricted nature of the under and overspends by directorate. 3.11 talks about local government pay, which has now been settled as of January, and the cost of the council of this is 1.1 million compared to our budgeted contingency of 0.75 million. So we're experiencing 350,000 more there. This can be offset from the overall forecast underspend and is incorporated within this forecast. The implications on the council's medium-term financial strategy, which is a 4-year strategy and being finalised and will be incorporated in the final budget presented here. Sorry, is incorporated in the final budget presented here. I've talked about that. The capital position is worth noting in paragraph 4, where it shows that the total project expenditure for the year 2023-24 is expected to be almost 41 million, and it's shown in table 4.2, split between directorate and then the sources of the financing. It's important to note that sources of financing there are not sourced from council tax. The dedicated schools grant we've already talked about with relation to the query from scrutiny. The statutory override position does continue, but the issue here is that the risk reserve contains the risks that we currently have from the dedicated schools grant exposure, and that this means we aren't able to use funds anywhere else due to the risk. Final thing I wanted to just cover is that the savings that the council has achieved. So the 2024 budget is 23-24 budget is underpinned with 1.1 million pounds worth of savings, as you can see in paragraph 6, and this is contained within the net cost of services expenditure. Of the 24 projects that the council is undertaking, the council has still now delivered 21 of the 24, and from a monetary position, this means the council's achieved 93% of the 1.1 million savings anticipated. This all helps the progress towards delivering our financial sustainability strategy, as detailed in paragraph 7, and we've covered before. I think that provides enough detail, I hope, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from members of Cabinet? Councillor Wise.
I think it's worth noting we've mentioned already the issues in adult social care and in the SEND budget where we can suddenly have an expense. I think the places overspend highlights that that's not the only places where we can suddenly get. So the sudden closure of our in-county waste transfer station incurred a lot of costs that we had absolutely no choice over meeting. So I think this particularly highlights that.
Thank you. You're quite right. And the director's approach to our problems, potential problems, having a risk reserve, I think is actually extremely helpful because it does enable us to have a measure of confidence that we can cope with the unexpected, which obviously is what it's there for. I would like to commend the directors for their very hard work in keeping us on the straight and narrow, financially speaking. I do appreciate it's very, very difficult. I'd also like to make a comment about the use of temporary staff in some scenarios. We are often criticised for using agency staff because they're going to cost a lot more than employing our own. But sometimes we have no choice because we need to get people in quickly because the job has to be done. Sometimes it actually makes sense in the medium term because we are buying in expertise that we want to do something specific. And once that specific is done, we no longer need that expertise. And it's not cost effective to employ somebody on a permanent basis when you know the job you want them to do is only going to last 6 months. And that often happens where you're in a position that we are now, where we're transforming services and we want expertise to help us transform a specific area of activity. And I think it's important to know and recognise that because I think that is not well understood within our community. That was my comment on all of this. Thank you. Well, if there's nobody else, it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please. The recommendations in 1.2.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. We are moving on to the integrated budget plan and medium-term financial strategy. The recommendations are in 1.2 are extremely lengthy. Can we take them as read? Absolutely, Chair, they're on the record. Thank you. We'll take them as read. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Johnson, a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Having been proposed and seconded, can I ask Councillor Johnson to introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the final version of the integrated budget plan, which if we approve it, will be going to council on the 26th of February. And it represents almost a year of hard work in reality with both officers and members of the administration in preparing it and making sure that it is fit for purpose. In the last few weeks, we have received some additional funding from central government, but it's important to understand that this additional funding, although headlined at some 7.5% on average, does in actual fact contain the very large assumption that all councils will increase their council tax by the maximum allowed, which is 4.99%. So in reality, councils are only getting some 2.5% extra from central government when inflation has been running as an average closer to 7.5 to 8% over the last 12 months. We've received some additional funding which can go into or is going into the rural services grant, and the latest funding also gives more that is directed towards adult social care, which will be very useful. The council must set a balanced budget. It is a requirement of us and we are obliged to do so by government. And of course, it's also responsible to do so. A budget is a really important part of the way the council understands its commitments in service levels and the costs that it incurs in providing these. So this report to Cabinet forms part of the council's formal budget framework. There is a legal requirement to set a balanced budget, and the purpose of the report is to recommend that Cabinet approve the budget proposals, recommend that Cabinet approve the assumptions in the budget and the update to the medium-term financial strategy. That Cabinet, the paper outlines the financial impact of the financial challenges facing the council, and that the paper outlines the strategic approach and the actions taken by the council to deliver a balanced budget for 2024-25. The main difference between this version and the version that was agreed for consultation is obviously the results of the consultation. So this has gone to consultation, which finished at the end of last week, the previous week, and 215 responses have been received as at the end of January. We're grateful for these responses. We have read them all. They are included within the pack in Appendix J, and they contain a lot of comments about the way residents see the council and the way residents think we're addressing priorities. I'll come to something about that later on. So in terms of priorities for the council recognises that it is its number one priority to be financially sustainable, which means that we do not, on a long-term basis, spend more than the funding that we have available, because to do so would be irresponsible. This integrated budget plan and the medium-term financial strategy, which are connected to it, puts the council on a very firm footing to deliver on this priority. Whilst the plan relies on the use of almost £1 million worth of reserves for 2024-25, the budgets for future years are balanced against future estimated income receipts. This is actually ahead of the original timelines outlined in the financial sustainability strategy, which was approved by council in November 2022. So we are using less reserves to underpin the day-to-day expenditure, which is a good result and is quite different to many other councils. The plan and strategy has been put forward with affordable service provision at the heart of its creation, ensuring that these services deliver the corporate strategy. The council previously recognised that a transformational approach to how it delivers services was required. Previous medium-term financial strategies showed the council was living beyond its means, with reserves being used to prop up day-to-day expenditure. This is always an extremely dangerous position and one that we need to manage our way out of and seem to be making very good progress towards. So this plan aims to deliver financial sustainability. And over the life of the medium-term financial strategy, it considers the budget pressures from rising demand for services and increasing costs from inflation and increasing costs of pay awards. Given that inflation over the last 2 years has been at some 11% and 8%, the pressures on the council at the moment exceed the original anticipation when the work was done towards the end of 2022, but we are still producing a result that is sustainable. The strategic investment in fixed assets is some 45 million, which is of the order of 5 million more than was in 23-24. Again, illustrating that the council is investing in its assets. For the first time, we've included the 14 financial health indicators that enable all members to understand past decisions on financial performance, influencing on the current and future financial prospects of the council as drivers of expenditure and opportunities to create sustainable plans. And the budget contains savings proposals based on the 12 transformational work streams that are currently being worked on, which will deliver £4.6 million worth of savings over the life of the 4-year plan. The provisional settlement announced by the government on the 18th of December and the additional announcement on the 24th of January continues to mean that the council is increasingly reliant on council tax as its main source of income to deliver services to the most vulnerable in society. To deliver community services alongside the other services that make Rutland a great place to live and work, such as roads, transport and waste collection, and statutory services that keep the community safe and well. The way the council measures all these services can be found in the council's performance reports, which are regularly published every quarter. It remains true that the council faces financial challenges, with early indications from government suggesting a return to the level of cuts seen in the years of austerity. And it's worth noting that on average, compared to 2010, the year 24-25, funding available from central government to councils will only be 68%, some 2/3 of the funding that was available in 2010. So councils are having to make all their decisions and provide all their services with only 2/3 of the income that was available 14 years ago. In terms of the consultation, I've already talked about, we're very grateful for the responses and the many varied comments that were made. One of the points we'd like to pick up is that there are some concerns about the statutory duties of the council and how we deliver savings. I hope that the report here gives some confidence that we are achieving savings and we are able to provide value for money to residents by doing things differently and hopefully doing things better. The report is structured into 15 chapters of detailed information over a total of almost 200 pages, including the appendices. It is very thorough and I believe it's very transparent. I don't intend to quote from all 200 pages, you'll be glad to know, this morning, but it is a weighty paper. All members of the Cabinet have been involved in the preparation of this budget since July last year and are familiar with the issues. I would like to move that all the recommendations in section 1.2 of this report are put to the vote.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from anyone? No? I thought I had one of it's coming to. You didn't second it. I'll go back to the recommendation. Did we have a seconder?
Yes, you did.
Yes, I thought I did. Sorry about that. I think from the public's point of view, the point about how high our council tax is and how we have zero choice about that is an important one. People in Rutland pay an extremely high level of council tax compared with other places. It's rooted in history and government's failure to adopt recommended changes that they received back in 2016. The impact isn't just high council tax, though. It's that we don't have spare money. And so we are not providing some of the things that we provided back in 2016 and before. And that will continue to be the case. And as we transform services, residents will see a difference. Yes, our bins will get emptied and the basics like that. But some of the nice to haves we're not having. For example, when I became a councillor, we had quite a thriving youth service. It's been pared back and is now directed at those most in need, which of course is important, but it's not universal as it once was. And we have no choice because we have to focus on the things that we are required to do. And I think it's important to make that clear. If there's nothing from anybody else, we've been proposed and seconded the recommendations in paragraph 1.2. All those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to item number 10. Cabinet is recommended to determine whether the public and press be excluded from the meeting in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and in accordance with the access to information provisions of Procedural Rule 239, as the following item of business is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 2 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. That is paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Do I have a proposer, please? Thank you. Councillor Johnson, a seconder. Thank you. All in favour?
It's unanimous, Chair.
Shall I do the recommendation again?
You can vote in public.
Yeah, perhaps I
Mhm.
should, yeah. The recommendation for item 11, write-off of irrecoverable debts, is that we note the action taken to recover outstanding debts, and we authorise the write-off of the debts shown in exempt Appendix A. All those in favour, please. It's been proposed and seconded.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have not been notified of any items of urgent business. And the date of the next meeting of Cabinet is Tuesday, the 12th of March, 2024 at 10 o'clock as usual. Thank you very much.